a mechanic breaks your game once, it will break your game again. This is something we like to call a red flag. Do not ignore red flags when your partner is jealous and controlling. Do not ignore red flags when you work somewhere with a high turnover rate. And please don't ignore red flags when your game literally breaks from something a player did. Now, time and time again, game designers have glossed over broken mechanics that have created infinite loops, impossible attacks, and backdoor wins. So when you discover a game-breaking mechanic, please don't assume it is just a one-off situation that could never, ever repeat again. Now, if your players ask the same question more than 2 times in a row, this is a red flag. The game designer Eric Lang once said, "If your game is exceptionally rich in strategy and tactics using only blank cards, you're designing the wrong type of game." Over-designing a game is so easy to do. Now, we've all done it before, and I guarantee that you and I will do it again. So it isn't just essential to play test your game, you need to play test your rulebook. Now, I know it's really proofreading your rulebook, but playtest has a bit more pizzazz to it. So playtest your rules to make sure they are understandable to the everyday player. If the everyday player is asking to be reminded about a rule again and again, then that rule isn't intuitive enough. Now, this means one of 2 things: that the rule isn't explained correctly for the everyday player, or that it doesn't match the flow of your game. When you're designing a game, the flow and the feel of the game has to be natural, and it's very crucial for the player's experience. And a contradictory rule or inconsistent wording can easily confuse the player. Now, the question is, when you're looking at your own TCG, is the problem with overcomplexity, formatting of your words, or readability through game design? Whichever one it is up to you to find it and fix it. Now, is this video going well? Because the biggest red flag for me is you not hitting that like button, or at the very least leaving a comment in the comment section below telling me what your biggest red flag is when you're playing a brand new game. As always, I look forward to hearing your opinion, and thank you. Now let's follow up with another nugget of advice from Eric Lang. Keep your victory conditions simple and clear. Complicate with cards, not rules. Now, I want to elaborate on this and say that your rules need to be straightforward and your cards need to be simple and understandable. But the accumulation of all of your cards need to provide that complexity to your game. So if a player picks up a single card and doesn't relatively understand what that card is capable of doing, then congratulations, you have found another red flag. But that kind of covers our previous red flag of players asking questions. Now, what we want to focus on is the victory conditions that Eric Lang was talking about. Now, TCGs, they are simpler games in some ways. Multiple win conditions isn't really our thing when it comes to card games. We as players like one goal to aim for, whether that's shield cards, life points, or something else. But you'll find with TCGs there are 2 common win conditions. The most common alternate win condition is decking out, where a player will simply run out of cards to play. This alternative win condition is hardwired into almost every TCG. And that is simply because at that point of the game, you are out of options. So it is naturally to conclude the game and see who won. And realistically, your game shouldn't be reaching that point of deck exhaustion. So in a way, that's a little bit of a red flag, unless a game has implemented it as a proper strategy. Speaking of which, we have the Harry Potter TCG, which has implemented life decking. So the goal of that game is to actually deck out your opponent. Now, this is a clever system to do because you have implemented 2 win conditions into one. You want to defeat your opponent and you can do it with the alternate win condition. When you look at it on paper, you have simplified the game. Well done. But even though your alternate victory condition is now your only victory condition, Players kind of like playing the cards that they spent hours collecting and building custom decks from. So having a game where you're attacking those cards and they don't get to play those cards isn't fun for the player. So it is simplified, which avoids one red flag. But it isn't fun, which creates a bigger red flag. So I know it is tempting to have a dynamic game where players can win by accumulating points, or by gathering sets of special cards, or by destroying 5 different colours of certain cards on the field. And these all may be fun objectives for your player, but you just need to pick one. So your TCG is working. Turn structures in place, effect ordering in place, no game breaking mechanics, no infinitely looping effects. Your win condition is simple and clear, but your game is boring. So do we go ahead and release a working but boring game? No, this is a red flag. So the main culprit of a boring card game is a stale winning strategy. This results from a select few cards being above the power curve. And most likely your searching cards are too good at finding these powerful cards. This results in a lot of consistency for your game, which is good to a point. Now, too much consistency in a game that is designed to be played again and again and again results in you seeing the exact same strategy again and again and again, which becomes stale, which becomes boring, and then you put the game away. So cards that are naturally above that power curve are going to be selected, and cards that are good at searching those powerful cards are going to be selected. Once you get those searching cards and you get the powerful cards out, you are repeating the same strategy again and again and again. This creates a winning formula, which is fantastic, but how many times do you win with the exact same strategy before you become a little bit tired of it? A player needs variety, critical thinking, and decision making to whet the appetite for playing that game. So don't forget to challenge your players. Make your cards strong, but not too strong. Make your cards fast, but not too fast. Make your cards good at searching, but not too good. Because if your cards are that good that they can just play themselves, then why do you need players? Now, one major red flag to card games and board games is having too many exceptions to the rules. If your game has an abundance of exceptions where the core rules don't apply, this can lead to confusion, frustration, and a steep learning curve for new players. Yeah. Every time you introduce an exception, you are adding complexity to your card game, making it harder for your players to internalize the core mechanics. This can overwhelm your players, making them feel like they need to memorize a series of exceptions instead of actually enjoying the gameplay. So what needs to be done instead? Focus on creating a solid foundation of rules that can be easily understood and followed. If you find that a rule needs an exception, then you need to ask yourself, is this exception intuitive to the players? Most likely this isn't the result. In which case you have to be cold-hearted and purge your game of that conflicting rule. And I want to give you a line from William Faulkner: murder your darlings. So no matter how much you love a certain mechanic, if it doesn't go with your other ingredients, then you're following the wrong recipe. And I think this is one of the most common red flags, because sometimes we have great ideas that just aren't the right fit. So sometimes the only thing that you'll do right is doing everything wrong, because it is a huge learning experience when we make mistakes. But if you worry too much about failing to make a good game, just remember that skill and knowledge take time. And while you wait, there is nothing wrong with having fun making games. So go out and create games and make mistakes, because it just refines you on your journey to creating your masterpiece. I've been James, you've been watching my Talk TCG, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.